It's a fresh look at the good book with John David Ware and Pastor Eric Waters, featuring the films of the 168 Film Project. Since 2003, 168 is a speed film competition where artists create a short story based on God's Word. Filmmakers compete from anywhere in the world.
Have you ever lost your temper? Some people think you should lose your temper at least once, like at a new job, so people know not to mess with you. Most people are very, very concerned with preserving their integrity and their honor and defending it. This next character is more concerned with defending his anger. Think about these things as you watch the film and the choices the characters make. Then we'll take a look at the Word of God and see how it can guide us.
Ogilvy International announced its decision today to begin talks with Heritage of France. Max Hargile of Exeter Brokerage Group will be negotiating. Experts say the merger will be very profitable for both parties, but of course it has investors scrambling.
Hey, you always have to slam the door?
Do you always have to wear that shirt?
I'd watch where I was going if I were you.
Yeah, right.
I pay a lot of money to live here, and I don't think it's too much to ask that we have lights in the hallways that work properly. And we've discussed this before, Juan. It's ridiculous. It's like a disco in there. No, listen to me. I want it fixed tonight when I get home. Ron?
Your desk, Mr. Argyle.
Good boy. What? No, don't check this out this time. Just do it. Give me a call. Those are new numbers? Sure are. Have you seen them? Just now. Looking good for you, huh? Good for me. How about I buy dinner later? Okay.
Good morning, sir. Mr. Bartlett called last night to reschedule a meeting to 3 o'clock and...
Mr. Bartlett called last night?
Yes.
And you didn't page me?
You said you didn't want to be disturbed.
But if Mr. Bartlett called,
I was
don't
just
you
trying to
think
do
that
what you
I'm
had asked.
talking?
I'm sorry, sir. I thought since the...
Reasons are not excuses, Marcia. Get the rabbit thing off of your desk. Throw it in the trash.
Rabbit thing. Rabbit thing.
John Bartlett, how you doing, buddy? Yeah, sorry about that. So I understand we're breaking the Ogilvy thing at 3 o'clock now. No, that was last week's. I'm sorry if it threw you. It won't happen again. What's that? No, John, absolutely. Listen, buddy, when this is all over, let's get that golf game in, okay? Right. Okay. Great. I'll see you at 3 o'clock then. You're fired.
Yes? You know, Marcia's leaving. Maybe you should... I will. I just, All right.
Here we go, gentlemen. Enjoy your meal. I'll be back to check on you in a minute.
Stuffed rabbits are following you. Rabbits. Just one. Do you see any rabbits now? It's one rabbit. I just told you. Last year, when my grandmother went to the hospital, she started seeing my dead Uncle Lester. The night that she died, she grabbed my hand and she said, "You know that man outside the bakery that looked like your Uncle Lester? It was your Uncle Lester." And then she got this funny look in her eyes. And she said, "I think before you die, you get a preview." And she died.
Would you please let it chill? That hasn't chilled long enough.
I apologize, sir.
What? Why do you have to be so angry all the time?
Oh, I have every right to be angry.
At the waiter? The valet guy? At Marcia? Marcia's screwed up. Do you have any idea how bad she made me look today? It isn't always about you, Max.
Oh, screw it.
Yeah, why not? I'm probably the only one left. Do you realize that if we got all the people you've ever maimed or injured in your lifetime in a room so that you could see them all, why are you trying to ruin my dinner? I'm having a little difficulty with you sitting here calmly eating your $30 steak while Marcia's at home trying to figure out how to cover the next month's rent. I am not going to feel sorry for Marcia. I wish you could. You know what? You should be ashamed of yourself. You're out of control. You don't even see it, do you? You hurt people, Max. All the time. And if you had any shame at all, but I don't. So shut up. You're a fool. How did you get this way? If you really are seeing things, if that rabbit is real, I'd pay attention to it. It's trying to tell you something. Please.
If you ever do something like that again, I will kill you.
Enjoy your dinner, sir. Have a good night.
Yeah. You
Let
too.
me get that. I'll get that for you.
I see you're no worse for wear, Mr. Warm and Fuzzy. And you know what? Neither am I. In fact, I'm glad it happened. It changed me. It made me strong. Because in this life, there are winners and losers, and you choose. I've gotten everything I've ever wanted out of this world. Girls and cars and money. And yeah, maybe I've hurt some people along the way, but so what? They could have fought back. That was their choice. And I'm not going to apologize for being a winner. I'm not going to apologize to Marcia. I'm not going to apologize to the waiter and the valet Parker. I'm not going to apologize to anybody because I'm ashamed of nothing. I could have been a valet Parker. Can you imagine? Now that I'd be ashamed of. Oh, boy.
You look pretty comfy back there in my leather seats. You like this car, don't you? Screw warm and fuzzy. Because this is the real world, and if you don't like it, you can go to hell.
I can't even see which key is mine. What is the matter with these people? This is unacceptable! You idiots!
What happened out there?
The lights went out.
Is that all?
What are you doing?
I'm sewing your last one. You've been busy. You and that temper of yours. I told you to watch where you were going.
Wait!
Well, first of all, you've got to be impressed by the stellar cast that was playing in this film and the writing. The writing is spectacular. It's by a friend of mine called Luke Skelhaus, who's a big-time writer-producer, and he's done a ton of stuff, including Touched by an Angel and Superman, Outlander, and just amazing. The story is an everyman story, which means there's a flawed character, and the everyman story can have failure or it can have success. In this case, it's a cautionary tale because the lead has failure. I mean, Max's struggle is with his anger, and that shows off from the very first moment. And his struggle is can he let go of that anger and release his captive audiences that he just keeps biting their heads off. It starts with the trappings of wealth, so he's really wealthy. You see American Express and expensive car keys, and he's biting people's heads off immediately. And there's this rabbit. That year, it was 2004, we had everybody use a prop, and that was a little stuffed rabbit. We found 99-cent rabbits from the 99-cent store, and so that's what we gave them to use. And it turned out that they bought like 300 rabbits and used them in their film. So later, he's been dealing with his anger, venting it. He goes to dinner with a friend after he's fired this poor secretary. And Max is like starting to question his sanity because he's seeing this little stuffed rabbit on the desk, on the concrete, everywhere. And the friend razzes him and said, come on, wake up. And he says, and this starts to get to the theme, he says, I think before you die, you get a preview. And he kind of sets up his coming death. And the theme setup is, why are you so angry all the time? And the assumption is anger is shameful, okay? But he says, I have every right to be angry. Marcia screwed up, you know? And he's defending his anger. And so Max has no empathy. He's not worried about looking bad. He's not worried about Marcia. And his friend says, you hurt people all the time. And if you had any shame, but I don't. So shut up, is what he says. And the friend leaves, and he says, on a parting shot, he says, pay attention to that rabbit. I think it's trying to tell you something. So we see the incident, we have a flashback to Max as a school kid, and the thing that made him into the monster that he is. He gives this gift to the girl in school, and it is not appreciated, and he's made fun of. You don't make fun of Max. And he threatens to kill the classmate, and he continues to rage for the rest of his life. So an additional theme is, does anger help me get what I want? That's why he's protecting his anger, because it works for him. And a lot of these famed Hollywood directors, screamers, ragers, they get what they want, believe me, and it works for them. So you can see why it is. I love his soliloquy to Mr. Warm and Fuzzy. And he says at the end of that, I have no apologies because I'm ashamed of nothing. So he jokes about the theme, being ashamed of a valet. He's like, now that I'd be ashamed of. And then he has a heart attack, right? And the Satan character, which is my friend Barbara, she's sewing a bunny, sitting in a chair, and she says, I'm sewing your last one. And the payoff to that is, well, we hear him say, if we could get, this is the friend says, if we could get everyone you've ever maimed into a room, then it would be a giant room. So he finally loses. You know, the character finally has the dark night of the soul, heart attack, and he's on the way to ostensibly to hell. And the door is shut on him, and we see this room full of bunnies, all that he's maimed and hurt and maybe even killed, we don't know. And he has to deal with the guilt and shame of that finally before he dies. So, Pastor Eric, lot there. I'm going to hand the ball to you because you got the hard part.
All right. Well, this was a great film. It's one of those films that I liked, but I didn't enjoy. And what I mean by that is, as you introduced it, it is a cautionary tale. And so I very much liked it because it's a great film. It's very well put together. It moves along very briskly. But boy, it's a sobering tale, because I really see it as a tale of what happens to you if you don't repent. You know, there's a great passage that comes from the book of Romans. Let me find that for you. And it says this, Romans chapter 2, verses 5 and 6. But because of your hard and impenitent heart, you are storing up wrath for yourself on the day of wrath, when God's righteous judgment will be revealed. He will render to each one according to his works. And that's exactly what we see in this film, is that he's the character Max has all of these opportunities to choose to do the right thing. You know, Mr. Warm and Fuzzy is there. He could choose to be warm and fuzzy time and time and time again, with Marcia a couple times, with a valet, with his friend, but he wants nothing to do with the warms and fuzzies. He chooses to revel in his anger. You know, there's another verse from Philippians. This is Philippians 3, verse 19, where Paul's warning about people, and he says, for they glory in their shame, with their minds set on earthly things. And boy, that's Max to a T. You know, that he's got his mind, his heart, his entire life is focused on earthly things. And he, not only does he say, I got nothing to be ashamed of, but he glories in what ought to be ashamed. You know, I mean, he says, this is who I am. This is how I get things done. And this is what he actually says. I'm ashamed of nothing, and screw warm and fuzzy, because this is the real world. And if you don't like it, well, you can go to hell, which is exactly where Max ends up. And so he goes back home, He has the heart attack, and he's stuck literally in the outer darkness. He's locked out in the outer darkness with a gnashing of teeth, surrounded for all eternity by these terrible things he's done by this sin. So it's a great film, but boy, is it a cautionary tale. It is a cautionary tale. As a preacher, I'd say that this film is really, it's all law. There's no gospel. It's all about what you should or should not do, nothing about what God has done for you. That it's all about getting what you deserved, not being given what you don't deserve by God's grace. And that finally it's about God's wrath. That, Max is a terrible person who's lived a terrible life, and in the end, he gets what he deserves. God's wrath. He's locked in that closet with his bunnies forever. There's no redemption. There's no chance for him to turn to Jesus, to ask Jesus to take these bunnies away from him and be saved.
So the actual foundational verse is applicable too.
Oh, absolutely.
And you have a fool shows his annoyance at once, but a wise man covers shame.
Wise man covers shame, yep.
So unpack that for us.
Sure. And so in Proverbs, they often contrast the one to the other. So a fool does this, a wise man does that. Got it backwards. So a fool does this, a wise man does that. And it says, a fool shows his annoyance at once, but a wise man covers his shame. So somebody's a fool because of the way they behave, that they show their distraction, their annoyance right off the bat. Just like in this case, Max gets annoyed at everybody, even at the waiter. It's not chilled yet, let it chill, right? He's very annoyed by that. But a wise man covers his shame. And so a wise man tries to say, I recognize I did something wrong here, and I'm going to try not only to not do that, but to not show it to you. Max is just the opposite. He says, well, this is who I am. If you don't like it, get lost. Yeah. So he is what we would call a biblical fool, which is not only somebody who does something foolish and stupid, but the fool says in his heart there is no God. And Max lived his whole life like that, and in the end, that's what he gets.
So is this a seminary term, this biblical fool thing?
It could be, yeah. It's from the Bible, so it's probably a seminary term. Oh, yeah. The fool says in his heart there is no God. Yeah.
Biblical.
And so, because in our context, fool is like a clown, somebody who makes you laugh.
Yeah.
But in the Bible, a fool is somebody who has made wrong decisions again and again and again and ends up with a life they don't want and finally ends up in a place they don't want.
Okay, so you've got this guy, Max, and he got scarred and became hardened, calloused, in high school. Mm-hmm. So speak to those people and maybe how we can reach them when they're so hardened against good things.
Yeah, and you can kind of see where Max is going. I mean, if there's one scene that makes you a little sympathetic toward Max, it's this scene here. Where you see Max, he's in school. I think it's high school. He reaches out to this girl he's got a crush on, and she not only says no, but she humiliates him. All the girls are there laughing at him, and then the jock comes over and points at him. Yeah. So this is like Max tried to be warm and fuzzy once in his life, and it didn't work. And so for the rest of his life, he says, I'm not going there, right? I'm never going to make myself open or vulnerable again, even though he has all of these opportunities to do so. And that's the thing, the people who've hardened their hearts, people who've been seared by bad experiences, don't ever want to go back and make themselves open or vulnerable again. And so you have to open their eyes and let them see, just like Max's friend at the dinner. He says, maybe that rabbit's trying to tell you something. Keep your eyes out for him. You have to play that role in your friend's life and say, this is an opportunity where you can do the right thing. You don't have to respond with anger. You don't have to respond with bitterness. You don't have to respond with sarcasm. You can actually respond from the heart. Be warm and fuzzy for once in your life, and you'll begin to heal. You'll begin to turn around and go in the right direction.
Yeah, I've seen it time and time again. People get hurt by the church.
Yeah.
And that's maybe the deepest wound. I don't know.
Oh, it's terrible. Absolutely, because the church is the place where you're supposed to know God. You're supposed to come to know God and His great love for you. And so if the church is a place that has delivered one of those wounds, or when you did open yourself up, make yourself vulnerable, and they somehow hurt you even more, well then, how do you ever go back? Yeah, and so those church wounds are some of the deepest and some of the most painful. Yes.
And what do you say to someone like that? I mean, I mean, logic is pretty much hard. You just ask them questions and say, do you think they're against you? Do you think the whole church is against you? What do you say?
Yeah, I've come across these multiple times in my role as a pastor. And what you have to do is listen to the person, let them tell their story, sympathize with them, because often these stories are just terrible. But then let them know, you know what? The church was wrong. The church was not representing Jesus. In this case, the church did not do what Jesus wanted, and they made a mistake. And help them to see that they're right. You know that you were right to feel bad at this.
Yeah, and the interesting part about the director of this film, when he got this verse, he realized, I have an anger problem. And he took this film to the church camp, and they viewed it, and people started to getting rid of their anger.
Wow. Well, thanks be to God.
Yeah, it's been a real win-win-win situation, and we're thankful that you all took this time to take the journey and take a fresh look at the good book.